Hi there, Darren Overstreet here. I'm the lead evangelist for the Seattle Church of Christ. And as the chair of the ICOC Ministers Health Committee, I'm excited to introduce another video to you as we just continue to step into the important conversation around the physical, the mental, and the emotional health of our ministers all over the world. In this video, you'll hear from a member of our team. His name is Thierry Fender. He is the evangelist in the Geneva Church of Christ, and he's also the president of the European Bible School. And he holds bachelor's degrees in both mediation and Christian counseling. And he wants to briefly speak to you about the idea of Sabbath rest, something that is extremely important for all of us as ministers. You know, a short video like this obviously can't cover all that Sabbath and rest entails, but as he shares his own experience with sabbaticals and his conviction about taking rest each week, we hope you will be encouraged to look at the rhythms and the habits of your own life. I really love what Terry says in this video. He films this video from in front of the window in his office, and honestly, the view from that window alone makes me want to take some Sabbath rest in his house. But seriously, my friend Tim Summerlin, who also serves on our committee, has said many times, he said this: God's command on rest is the only one we seem to fight him on. He's right. That's humbling and that's convicting. And as we enter 2021 and start a new year, let's evaluate our own ideas around rest and how that affects our spiritual health. God bless you all, and thank you for what you do for God's people.
Hello, this is Thierry Fender from Geneva, Switzerland, where we enjoy a beautiful winter surrounded by amazing mountains. In the next couple of minutes, I would like to talk to you about sabbatical principles that help us remain healthy. Sabbath day, Sabbath timeout, and sabbatical fund. And instead of doing a 5-minute Bible study, you can find many on those on the internet. I prefer to share my learning experience through the years and share how God used my sabbatical timeout and Sabbath day to refresh my soul and prepare me for the next challenges in my walk with God. I started to work for the ICOC Church in Paris in 1991, 30 years ago, and I never stopped working for the church. I have to say that to keep me in the paid full-time ministry, God forced me, so to speak, to go through 2 sabbatical timeouts. My first sabbatical time out was in 2001. After 10 years in the full-time ministry, I was exhausted, emotionally, spiritually. And to make a long story short, me and my wife were given a 4 months sabbatical timeout to refresh our walk with God. And after that, we moved to Geneva. During the year 2002, I implemented some radical changes in our church in Geneva. Then when the 2003 crisis hit, I was actually feeling okay, emotionally and spiritually. I could take the hit. I survived in the full-time ministry, but unfortunately, I survived alone. All my colleagues in Western Europe got laid off or resigned. We were 40 on staff in 2002, and just 1 left by the end of 2003. Very sad. Most of the staff people were not emotionally and spiritually ready for the hit. Now, interestingly, the changes that I implemented in our church in 2002 were actually highlighted later in the famous Honest to God paper written by Henry Crete in 2003. Then, 9 years later, in 2011, I was tired again. Actually, from 2003 to 2010, I was the only one on staff in Western Europe. and there was a lot to do to help many churches. So at the end of 2011, I asked for a sabbatical timeout. And although it was not very popular in the ICOC back then, my church gave me 3 months to take this sabbatical timeout. And after 3 months, I found my energy and motivation back again. Interestingly, right after my sabbatical timeout, my church was going through a potential division as 2 of our teachers in training were teaching dispensationalism in the church. But I was again emotionally and spiritually ready to protect the church. So at that point in 2012, I studied the Sabbath principles, and I realized that although it's not a law to follow in the New Testament, it remains definitely a principle from God. It's very simple. It's like tithing. Tithing is not a law in the New Testament, but we expect people to follow the principles of tithing in the New Testament and today. Same with the Sabbath. It's not a rule to follow in the New Testament, but I believe that it's a principle that God expects us to practice, just like tithing. Now we find this in Genesis 2, long before the Mosaic laws. We read in verse 2 and 3, "By the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing, so on the 7th day he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." And in Ephesians 5 verse 1, we are called to imitate God. So what's the great idea? The idea is to take a real 24 hours break from the craziness of life and work. To distress, to really rest, to enjoy God's creation in the nature, to contemplate God, to have special quiet times with God, and to have refreshing time with your spouse, with your family, to refuel your soul and your body. So in 2012, I started to put into practice those Sabbath day on Mondays. No emails, no meetings, no appointments, nothing that is stressful. A real entire day off with longer quiet times, some sport activities, and other refreshing activities. Now, to be honest, I did not respect the Sabbath principle completely and every week. I think there is some space for some flexibility. But I do think this helped me to stay alive in the full-time ministry through the last 9 years. Now, it's one of my goals in 2021 to respect the Sabbath day principle even more, because I see the blessings of it. Another great sabbatical principle is the sabbatical fund. In my church since 2007, we put aside 1 month's salary every year so that we can use it for a sabbatical break or a major crisis. I was able to use some of it in 2012 during my sabbatical timeout. And interestingly, during the COVID year, we did not feel any economical stress in the church because we have the sabbatical fund. This fund can be used anytime to give the employees a sabbatical timeout to refresh their soul and draw closer to God. Or in time of crisis, to give the full-time people a second chance after a period of time. We know about the sabbatical year off every 7 years in the Old Testament. We should learn from this principle. Now, to conclude, my impression after 30 years on staff is that if we practice the Sabbath principles and sabbatical timeout, maybe 3 or 4 months off every 7 or 8 years of work. Those who work full-time for the church will have great energy and motivation to serve God for the long run. And also, they will have the emotional and spiritual strength that is needed in times of crisis. I know of several staff people who practice these principles now, and they are thriving and very thankful of their new understanding of the Sabbath principles. We've seen thousands of church staff leaving the full-time ministry because of burnout or exhaustion, fatigue, or just not being ready spiritually and emotionally in times of crisis. Let's not repeat history. Let's not repeat the bad part of history. Let's build for the long run and keep our staff emotionally and spiritually healthy by applying the sabbatical principles that God has taught us and even shown the example as He rested on the 7th day of creation. Thank you very much for listening.